All right. Good afternoon, insiders. We're just about at noon. I'm Justin Rivers. Welcome to today's virtual tour talk, or as John DeSanto, who is speaking today, calls them talking tours, which I absolutely love. Credits all his. But we welcome today John DeSanto, one of our great guides who leads our Grand Central and subway tours. And he has been a 40 some odd year resident of Stuytown, and he's going to take us through a virtual talk of his home, from his home, and lots of fascinating stuff that popped up. A lot of stuff I didn't know when John was putting this together and we were doing some run through. So you're in for a real treat. John is also a very good storyteller. First, before we get going, a couple of things. One of which is if you have questions for John, you can be sure to type them in the chat and we will get them through to John at the end. Or when John is done, what we'll do is we'll open it up to some Q&A. If you could use the raise hand function, and then we'll unmute you individually. So either way is a good way to get the questions across. We'll be monitoring them there. The other thing is we have been really enjoying knowing where some of our participants are from. Now, Insiders has become a nationwide thing since we have gone on lockdown. So anybody joining from far afield, let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And lastly, San Francisco, formerly NYC. Thanks, Pete. Pete was on World's Fair yesterday. Lastly, just want to let you know, John, who is going to be speaking to you today, has 43 years in the restaurant business, which we are really trying to ply John into doing a talk about some of the famous places that he has worked in throughout the 43 years. One of the stories will make its way into this presentation today. I also see we have Palo Alto, California coming in, Chicago, Toledo, Ohio. Thank you all. Paradise Valley, Arizona, Washington State via New Jersey. I am Brooklyn via New Jersey. So great to see you all here. I am going to let John start, but feel free to keep shouting out your locations as you come in and enjoy the talk. John DeSanto, take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, Justin, and welcome everyone. Welcome. I hope you can all hear me. If there's a problem, please let me know. This is the first tour I've ever put together by myself, and I'm very thrilled to share my living room with you. I am sitting here in Stuyvesant town. I've lived here since 1977, 43 years. I just got a job at Windows on the World, and I got my first apartment here in Stuyvesant town. I'm sure if you asked many of the people who are watching us today, if they knew anyone who lived in Stuyvesant town, I'm sure we'd get a few hands raised because so many people have come through. Let's get started. Here's a map of Stuyvesant town. This is 80 acres of housing, 110 buildings. You've got 15 playgrounds, 11,232 apartments. Named, of course, Stuyvesant town is on the bottom 2/3. Named after Peter Stuyvesant. His farm was just west of here. Stuyvesant Park is 2 blocks away. And above 20th Street, you'll see Peter Cooper Village, part of the same complex, but a little more upscale. Larger apartments, 2 bathrooms for a 2-bedroom, very upscale for when this went up many, many years ago. Many different people have lived in Stuyvesant town, including some you might know. Our mayor, John Lindsay, lived here for a while. So did Howard Cosell. Frank McCourt, the writer, he stopped by and lived here for a while. Beverly Sills, one of my great customers at the Four Seasons restaurant. We love Beverly. Mary Higgins Clark. Gabe Pressman, reporter, newscaster. And Dick Barnett. Anyone a fan of basketball? Dick Barnett was a basketball player who lived here as well. Moving on, this is sort of a rendering of what Stuyvesant town was going to look like. You see the location of it in New York City. We're located on the East River, of course. It goes from 23rd Street north to 14th Street south, First Avenue on the west side, and Avenue C. on the east side of Manhattan here. If you'll notice, Robert Moses had, we'll go into Robert Moses in a minute, he had a lot to do with the building of Stuyvesant Town. But he also did the FDR Drive. If you see that FDR Drive along the river there, that was a big attraction for building this this tenement, the tenements here, only because of ease of car traffic. And believe me, Mr. Moses loved ease of car traffic. So here we are. The project was announced in 1943 by then Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, working with Robert Moses, the well-known city planner and power broker. They set their sights on the old gas house district. Now, this is a pretty good picture of the gas house district. It looks pretty good. But these gas tanks, there were four major tanks. And the gas house district was pretty much a slum. It was poor, with rampant crime and very poor sanitation, and it was an ecological disaster. These tanks leaked, and they weren't very safe. But there were 3,000 families that lived in the gas house district, mainly Hungarian, Irish, Italian, Jewish, a group with little money or political clout. So besides the tenement buildings and cold water flats, it included 200 active businesses there, one Lutheran and 2 Catholic churches, and 150 industrial firms. I don't know if any of you have heard of Goodman's Noodles. They were there. We had the Bull's Head Horse Auction. We also had David Loud's lumber yard on Avenue A. But Robert Moses pretty quickly used the principle of eminent domain to clear the undesirable slum with its sometimes leaking gas tanks that sat on a parcel of 82 highly desirable acres. And as you can see, the skyscrapers were doing very well. Empire State Building was built, Rockefeller Center was done, so was the Chrysler Building. But as far as housing was concerned, it was a big concern of the mayor and the people who live in New York. Housing was a problem. Now, there's a picture of Mr. LaGuardia and Mr. Moses putting together their plan. Now, they wanted to bring in someone to pay for all this. So to finance the project, Moses brought in the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company in a novel public and private relationship. They talked to this man right here. This is Frederick Ecker. This is a notorious Frederick Ecker. As the CEO of Metropolitan Life, and having built Parkchester in the Bronx, which is actually a larger community than Stuyvesant Town, that was a very successful real estate venture, and he was ready to do it again with this 82 acres here in Manhattan. He bargained very hard with Moses and the city, and for his $50 million to build this, he included a 25-year tax abatement and from the city of New York, and a number of concessions as well. His plan was a very good one. He really pictured this as a leafy oasis, very similar to replicating the suburbs almost, providing a middle-class living quarters, housing for nurses, teachers, civic servants, emphasis on courting the World War II veterans that were coming back from the war and taking those jobs as well. However, here's the rub. He wanted Metropolitan Life Insurance Company to choose the tenants that would live in Stuyvesant Town, and he would exclude Blacks and Hispanics. Now, this is a quote of Ecker. He said, "Negroes and whites do not mix." Well, this didn't bode very well for a lot of things. There were a furor over his comments about who his tenants were going to be and the segregation that he sought. It was brought to court, and Mr. Ecker actually won the case. LaGuardia was diametrically opposed to these principles, but they went ahead to finish the building. But Mr. Ecker got his way about not allowing blacks or Hispanics to come into Stuyvesant town. So let's see how that played out. He also had lots of different rules. In other words, he decided that no outside businesses would come into Stuyvesant town. No stores, no libraries, schools, anything like that, thus making the place only for tenants, keeping the others outside. Basically, this is your first stab at a gated community, so to speak, if you can imagine trying to keep everyone out of this 80 acres here. Here it is. We're looking at the oval in the center of the opening here, August 1st, 1947. And Mr. Ecker and Metropolitan Life Insurance had very strict rules for living in Stuyvesant town. There were absolutely no pets. You could not own a hamster. You couldn't have a cat. Nothing. No subletting. No walking on the grass. No noise after 9 o'clock, I'm sorry. And 80% of your parquet floors had to be covered in carpeting. I'm going to inject a little story here because when I first moved in, I didn't have enough money to fully carpet my 80% of the floors that I owned. My neighbors got wind of this and they all brought over carpeting for me to put down, even a runner to go down the hallway, and I passed my inspection the next day. Those are my tenants that I love here in Stuyvesant town. So the veterans who were taking over the apartments had no problem abiding by these rules because for them, for about $60 a month, they could get a 1-bedroom apartment and all utilities paid for. Gas and electric and water was paid for as well. But they also had a problem. They did form a tenants association, and having fought with blacks and Hispanics in the war, they did not condone the segregation rules. And by the way, there were 100,000 applications prior to opening, the preference giving to those veterans. In 1949, one tenant, his name was Jesse Kessler, lent his apartment while he went on vacation to the Hardin Hendrick family for their use, and while his family was vacationing. He didn't sublet the apartment. There was no problem with the neighbors or anything like that. But this was sort of a test case against Metropolitan Life. They were pushing back just a little bit. He was supported by a Dr. Lee Lorch, a mathematics professor. He worked at City College, and he also started the Town and Village Committee to End Discrimination in Stuyvesant Town. So he was supported by these people, and what they did was the tenants actually guarded this apartment, not only on the floor where he lived, but also in front. And Metropolitan Life did not want to push too hard on this, but it was certainly the first shot fired by the Tenant Association about the segregation of the tenants. Dr. Lorch, head of the Tenants Committee, was evicted from Stuyvesant Town, and he lost his job at City College as well through pressure from Metropolitan Life. He went to Penn State to teach there, and he was also fired there as well, again, from pressure from Metropolitan Life. He moved to Canada. He's still alive today. And he's very happy with the job he did to help desegregate Stuyvesant Town. And the Hendricks Party did eventually move in. And by 1950, the tenant segregation was lifted from Metropolitan Life. Now, this is a longer story. I mean, I'm just doing over it quickly here. There were lots of protests and marches and things like that. But by 1950, it was pretty much over. But MetLife was accused of racism. You got to remember, this is 1950. So for over 50 years, when I first came in, they still talked about them being a little bit racist. But of course, time heals wounds, and Mr. Ecker is long gone. And Mr. Ecker's statue is long gone. It used to be standing in the Oval when I first moved in here. And Mr. Ecker's statue is in storage somewhere. He's not getting the attention that maybe he wanted. But now we're talking about the golden years. The golden years, the 50s. Let me tell you, the soldiers, when they came home from war, they got back to work. All of a sudden, there were 6,000 kids in Stuyvesant town. The baby boomers were here. This is when you went to get an apartment in Stuyvesant town, they never showed you an apartment. What you did is they showed you a floor plan of the apartment. This was from a brochure that I got when I first was going to rent there. And I picked, of course, the top one, the one bedroom that I was looking for. And they gave me a choice of 2 buildings. And you couldn't go in the buildings, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. I snuck in, basically, just to look at the views from I knocked on some doors. But I got my first apartment. And again, you couldn't see what it looked like. Well, you couldn't test out the doors or anything like that. So let's see. Here's part of the brochure. And I love to share this because it's very Beaver Cleaver. I mean, this is the 50s, 60s, 70s. I got this in the 70s, but it's very, very old school. All right, this is what they said. The place is clean. It is clean. But I love what they said here. The staff scoops up the occasional piece of litter and packs it away almost before it hits the ground. Pretty impressive. But of course, the last paragraph says, we're not neurotic. So maybe they were just a little bit. The property is patrolled. This was an interesting little paragraph when they compared to other metropolitan areas. The hard crime rate was far behind Houston, Atlanta, Detroit, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. I really don't know how true that is. This was the 70s in New York. It was pretty tough. It was a pretty tough town. But the security guys were terrific. I got to meet them and see them all the time, made friends with them. And I love the story that one of them told me there was one woman who called them every Wednesday to say, it's an emergency, I left my oven on. So they would go up, they would turn off her oven just to find that every Wednesday she had a roast in there that needed to be turned off before she got home. So it would be cooked perfectly by the time she got there. That's the kind of people we have here. The people are nice. Well, that's good. I'm glad. I love this. A young mother sitting alone with her new baby, gazing at the play of the fountains and dreaming of the future. That's wonderful. A dad sitting in the sun on Sunday morning, reading the Times with toddlers puttering around the playground, and mother's home catching some well-deserved sleep. Hey, wishful thinking, that's wonderful. Let's move on. People are nice. The children are happy. Boy, they should be. They have 15 playgrounds there. They have the largest, Stuyvesant Town Little League is the largest Little League in the New York metropolitan area. They do a little parade around the Oval with bagpipes leading the parade. We have volleyball, paddleball, hockey, basketball, ping pong, all for the kids' use. The kids have a great time on Halloween and also Christmas carols by the fountain. Great place for kids. I love what it said. They talk about being in Long Island in the summer and how the kids in Long Island, they feel sorry for because there's nothing to do there. The shopping is easy. They advertise, do you need a new party dress on short notice? No problem. There we go. And transportation. Of course, the L train goes across. The 14th Street crosstown goes across as well. First Avenue bus uptown. And we also have the FDR Drive. It's very convenient to hop on the highway and head north or south to your destination. There is a garage in Stuyvesant Town. It fits 2,000 cars. And so it costs money to park there, but they do have parking. And the value is great. Whatever you pay in rent, it includes your gas and electric. And there's a picture of the old fountain. But those are the golden years. Oh, important phone numbers. If you notice, 4 out of the 7 are the same, but there's security, request for service, renting office, painting department. You can get painted every 2 years, no problem. It's free of charge. I have to say that their services are very, very good. It's delightful to have someone who can fix a plumbing problem, electrical problem, or any other thing that you might need. They do respond, and they're very, very good. So these are the new community updates. We get these every month. The only reason I put this one on, it's a great picture. It's very spring-like, but look at these two people. They're just looking at their phones. That's too sad. All right, an old picture of Stuyvesant Oval. That's a security desk by the fountain. They've moved it since then. But in 2006, we're coming into a new era here, because in 2006, during the real estate boom, Metropolitan Life decides to sell Stuyvesant Town on the open market, right in the midst of the real estate boom. Now, the listing drew many interested bidders, including many real estate families from New York, such as the Rudins, Harry Macklow, Lafrax, the Dursts. They were interested. Offers came from far away as the ruling family of Dubai, and as close as the Tenant Association from Stuyvesant Town, who wanted to put a bid in as well. Now, the tenant's bid was done by Stan Gorodnick. He was our councilman at the time. Carol Maloney next to him, and Senator Schuman. The Tenant Association put together a bid of $4.6 billion that came within close range, but not quite the same as Tishman Speyer, who won at $55.4 billion for Stuyvesant Town. Again, 11,232 apartments, 82 acres. They were really hungry for this. Now, Tishman Speyer proved to be the winning bidder. I should say, here they are. This is Mr. Jerry Speyer on the right and Robert Speyer on the left. At this point, I was working at the Four Seasons restaurant, and I worked their power lunch every day. And I had Mr. Speyer at least 3 or 4 times a week, along with all those heavy hitters. The Rudin, Jack Rudin was always there. Harry Macklow was always there at lunch. These guys would all swap stories and have lunch together, deciding the fates of us New Yorkers. But when Jerry Speyer came in and he had bought Stuyvesant Town, I went up. I was taking care of his table. I took care of him all the time. And I said, "Congratulations, you're my new landlord." And he goes, "John, that's wonderful. That's really great. Anything you need, just let me know." And I jokingly said, "Well, there's a fluorescent light out in my hallway. Maybe you can do something with." And he didn't think it was very funny. So I told him the special. It was miso seared cod, and I let the other captain take it over. So that was my relationship with Jerry Speyer. But the great lunchroom to work. It was the largest real estate deal in history. Come on, $5.4 billion. Just the real estate tax for Mr. Bloomberg, the mayor, put him in the black with that particular deal. But we ran into some problems with this because the complex was rent stabilized. Tishman Speyer was not able to recoup on their investment. I'll try to do this as succinctly as I possibly can. There's a great book about this. It's 400 pages, but this is what happened. Any deregulated apartment were rented, any deregulated apartments were rented for market rate. Under New York City law, apartments could only be deregulated when they reached a certain monetary threshold, all right? The monetary threshold could be reached as different methods by when a tenant left or when apartments underwent renovation. So in 2007, a lawsuit was filed against MetLife and Tishman Speyer on behalf of market rent tenants. The suit alleged that the market rate tenants could not be charged the same time the owners were receiving the benefits under the J51 program from the city of New York. The program specified that the apartments had to be maintained rent stabilized until the participation in the program expired after 2017. The tenant case was won on the basis of the J51 lawsuit that preceded Tishman Speyer defaulting on their mortgage. So in 2010, the commercial mortgage default followed in the heels of one of the largest real estate sales. It was the largest mortgage default from the largest sale. So what happened after that? Speyer gave up control of the complex to the creditors, and he avoided bankruptcy. He only put in $50 million in cash. The rest were done from really heavily from Wachovia, put in $2 billion. But Speyer's only lost $50 million. Let's see. When the battle over rent stabilization played a part, the property worth was then reevaluated to $1.9 billion, and Tishman would have defaulted anyway. The Blackstone Group bought Stuyvesant Town in 2015, and gradually many apartments have been brought up to market rate, but about 45% of the tenants now still pay regulated rent stabilized rate. Now, if you want to know more about this, again, it's complicated. Charles Begley wrote the book Other People's Money, and it's all about this sale. It's 400 pages. It's quite a story. All right. How about some pictures of Stuyvesant Town life? These are some pictures that I took, some pictures, professional pictures, and some stories that go along with them. Here's a view from our friend's apartment, looking downtown. Kind of a day like today, it looks like. But great view of downtown, great view of the fireworks on East River, if you can get up to the roof. I showed this picture to my daughter. This is the Oval, where the Easter egg hunt is. One of the differences after Tishman Speyer left is they used the Oval for different programs. This Easter egg hunt was done in the Oval. They show movies there now. They have bands there that play music on the weekends during the summer, and a lot of Frisbee playing and things like that. But I showed this to my daughter who grew up here, my daughter Olivia, and she said, oh my God, she shuddered. She said, death or candy. That's what this is. Boy, when they dropped that rope, some people could get hurt in there. She hated that. Oh, there she is, trick or treat. That's me and her 20 years ago. So cute. And so is my daughter. Anyway, trick-or-treating was great. If you went into 2 buildings, you can go to 176 apartments. Candy, candy, candy. Here's the fountain and the Oval during the summertime. And during the fall. This is a professional picture, but this is the Oval now. And during the winter was good. And the kids always enjoyed sleigh riding on the hills around there. There's a number of hills, and it's a great place actually for kids. It really is. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a view from my apartment. If you look past the tree, you can look through the 2 buildings. That's the Oval right there. I do not face the street. Many of the apartments, most of the apartments do not face the street. And it's great for quiet. If you have quiet neighbors, it's just fantastic. By the way, at 7 o'clock, when we all applaud for our first responders during this virus, this place is hopping. This is brand new, and I love this so much because I get a chance to skate for an hour every day before the kids come out back from school during the winter. And here I am, I have the place to myself, and this is brand new. I have my season pass for Stuyvesant Town Ice, and that's where I get my exercise in the winter. Farmers market comes in. That's very convenient for us. We don't have to walk to Union Square. And again, just the pathways. This is the pathway leading outside of my apartment. Now this, I really, this is something very new to me. My terrific neighbor upstairs, her name is Charlotte. As a matter of fact, she's listening to this right now. She's part of this tour. She's the one who gave me information about LEED, the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. I had no idea how green Stuyvesant Town was. Now, if you notice on the roofs, they have solar panels. These are not quite finished yet, but it's the largest solar panel project in the US, a rooftop solar panel in the US. They're about halfway done. They got the award, the Platinum Award for LED lighting installation, elevator shaft levers to keep the hot air in, minimize heat loss, high efficiency hot water heat exchangers, and they're the first multifamily buildings to receive an Energy Star certification. Charlotte is very, very proud of that, and so am I actually. Blackstone's doing a great job. We do a lot of recycling here, and we even do the composting. Everyone is involved in that as well. Let's see. That's it, folks. That's my story of Stuyvesant Town in a nutshell. I thank you very much for letting me show you my home. It is a wonderful place to live. Looks like I'm going to be spending my rest of my life here. So if you have any questions, I'll hand it over to Justin.
All right, John, thank you very much. That was awesome, by the way. And I love the new additions. I think it was great. So we had a question, and I think I was trying to do some research during the tour. There was a movie, somebody said that might have been possibly filmed or taken place in the 1950s with Judy Holliday. I see The Marrying Kind in 1952, which had Judy Cooper in it. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to when somebody asked about a movie. John, do you know anything about movies filmed? I know there's been a bunch of TV shows. Kojak had some filming there. I'm sure Law and Order's been there a couple times. I'm not sure.
I apologize. I don't follow the movies that much, but I didn't I didn't look to see what was filmed here.
Okay, yeah, but I think The Marrying Kind might be what that question was about. So Seth says, you told us how the area before Stuytown was known as the Gas House District, and we saw the picture. Was the land cleared of buildings in the streets that were originally part of the NY Street grid? I can answer that question, and John, you can throw in anything you know. Yes, it was. The grid was completely chopped up, and the buildings from the Gaslight District were just taken up. The idea at the time, especially during the LaGuardia administration with Moses, was a complete disregard for street grid. It was basically the super block and large housing complexes, and the original Manhattan Commissioner's grid was sort of the victim of that. John, I don't know if you have anything to add.
If you look at the Stuyvesant map, you can see that there's no streets that go through it.
Right.
They have the horseshoes on north, south, east, and west, and there is one road right through Peter Cooper on top. But that's it. The grid was all destroyed.
Right. Oh, okay. So really good question. The recent brochure you showed also listed Peter Cooper Village. What is the difference between the two? And I know, John, you and I had this conversation. So what is the difference between Peter Cooper Village and Stuytown?
The apartments are a little bit larger, ceiling-wise, space-wise. They were a little more expensive. They were considered the upper class as far as what they were offering. Two bathrooms for a 2-bedroom. All the other apartments in Stuyvesant, 1 bathroom. But that's about it. In other words, just a quieter, richer, wealthier, for a wealthier crowd.
And still is that way today, John?
That's correct. It's more expensive to live there than Stuyvesant Town.
Yes. And Lori just mentioned also air conditioning. So you actually told this great story. So Peter Cooper Village has air conditioning, Stuytown does not, right? Is that correct?
Well, no, Stuytown did not. And by the way, I like to call it Stuyvesant Town.
Stuyvesant Town, sorry.
Only because they did move it to Stuytown. That really bothers me. Loss of history, you know what I mean? No air conditioning until later on, actually in the 70s and 80s. They allowed air conditioning, but there was a $33, or in other words, depending on how many bedrooms you had an increase on your rent that was year round. I will confess, I do not have air conditioning in my apartment.
I think it's amazing, John.
And yeah, everyone says that's amazing. But you know what? You really get about 7 really hot days. After that, our Hunter fans take care of everything.
Great. Amber also sent a link into the chat about 4 classic movies that were filmed at Stuytown. I know The Marrying Kind was one. The Harder They Fall, which I believe was Humphrey Bogart's last film, which was a noir, and 3 Days of the Condor in '74 are one of them. So yeah, Stuytown's actually more in the movie and TV spotlight than I had thought.
Me too.
Yeah, there you go. Famous. Any other questions through the chat or the raising hand function for John? No? All right, John. What is the longevity of tenant residence? Many original tenants.
Wow, I'm so glad you said that. You know, I feel that I was very lucky to come in the 70s because they were still the original tenants here. I have people, Miss McCann is on my floor. She's 102 years old.
Wow.
She's in charge of all the nurses at Bellevue for over 30 years. These people have great stories. So what is the longevity? They live here. Most of them are widows, though. You know, their husbands are all gone. If I may tell one other story about Mrs. Sullivan, who lived on my floor, we gave her my daughter's goldfish to take care of for overnight. She couldn't see. She was very old. She had Coke bottle glasses. And when I went to get the fish, she handed it to me. She says, I fed it every day. She had it for a few days, but there was no fish in the bowl. I took it home and I told my wife the fish committed suicide. But in any case, the older people here all had great stories to tell. They all did great things in their lifetimes. And I'm glad I got a part of that before the new people started coming in. And by the way, the new families now, a lot more children. It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right, exactly. And John, you're getting a lot of support for not calling it Stuytown. Pete Tannen agrees. He said that's on par with calling San Francisco Frisco. So I apologize, especially since I talk about Peter Stuyvesant all the time. There was another question. Average rent in Stuyvesant Town right now?
All right, I'll throw it out here. $3,200 for a 1-bedroom, $4,200 for a 2-bedroom. That's
Okay.
market rates now. That's what I've seen advertised.
And do we know anybody famous who grew up there? Lori asked that question. We know Frank McCourt lived there and Mayor Lindsay lived there, but do we know anybody who grew up in Stuytown?
Oh, grew up? Who's the comedian? Reiser.
Oh, Paul Reiser. Yes, I did. Yeah, Paul Reiser. I saw that.
That's the only celeb who grew up here.
Yeah, I saw that too. Good catch. We have a question. Do you know anything about Stuyvesant High School? I know Lori, she just mentioned it. Lori is a graduate of Stuyvesant High School. Any connection? It raised my dad out of poverty from the Lower East Side. I do not personally, and Lori, you can jump in if you want at this point. I don't think there is a connection between Stuyvesant Town, and Stuyvesant High School. I mean, Peter Stuyvesant himself was obviously a big figure in this area because of Dutch New Amsterdam. Stuyvesant Town was built on the remains of his farm. So I think that was the connection. I'm not sure about the high school. And Lori's saying that the old building was near Stuyvesant Park.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right across First Avenue is Stuyvesant High School. It's over on 16th or 17th Street. They moved it downtown. I guess, oh boy, it's got to be over 10 years now, 15 years maybe. And my daughter was lucky enough to go to Stuyvesant High School as well.
Oh, cool. Great high school. Lori said that they call graduates peg legs.
Well, that was
I don't know, Peter Stuyvesant, who was the 6th Director General of New Amsterdam, had a peg leg. They called him Peg Leg Pete or Old Silver Band. That's a whole other talk, but that's right. Thanks, Lori. Any other questions before we wrap this? This has been, John, this has been great.
Oh,
Uh, I learned a ton. Yeah, so you got another vote for the presentation on the NYC restaurants, John. Pete Tannen wants to see it, and so do we. So I think we got to get to work on that next.
Oh boy. Okay. It'll be my pleasure.
Years of
It's a lot
history.
of fun.
Oh, Lisa Rhodes said yes, please. It's happening, John. Sorry. Oh, another one. Yep. Michael Caine. Oh, this is happening. Uh-oh. John, you and I will talk later.
Great, pal. This is great.
All right.
Thank you all very much for joining me today. I'm very pleased.
Good. And John, this was a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody who joined. We're glad you joined. We will get John on that presentation of NYC restaurants as soon as we can. I don't think there's going to be a lot of arm pulling there. We hope to see you again. I believe, Michelle, you can back me up on this. Our next talk is it Tuesday?
Yes. We've got your talk on the
that's
Brooklyn
me.
Bridge on Tuesday.
Okay.
On Wednesday, we've got Beth giving a virtual tour of the forts of Central Park.
Oh, great. Yep.
And we've gotten our stabilizers to work. So for everyone that's been on our virtual tours, it's going to be even smoother than before. And then on Thursday, we're doing 2 talks, one with the Francis Tavern about the restoration of Francis Tavern. So they've got really great archival images, stuff that I haven't seen before. So I'm very excited about that. In the afternoon, we'll be looking at the New York State Pavilion at Flushing Meadows. And we'll have footage from inside the pavilion and special guests from the New York Pavilion paint crew, and also people for the pavilion, and Aaron Assis, our artist in residence, who created a film series that included an episode on the pavilion. Tuesday, Berta, Tuesday will be the Secrets of the Brooklyn Bridge tour talk given by Justin.
Led by me, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Great.
So, somebody said Delmonico's. You didn't work at Delmonico's, did you, John?
No.
No. We could throw some in there, though. I know a lot about.
No, we're going to do a historic tour of those old restaurants.
Yeah. That'll be fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, John. John can be found at Venmo, as you see at the bottom, John DeSanto 5. And we will see you Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everybody.